You begin your daily session with fierce determination, analyzing charts with cold logic. But as soon as the price starts moving against your position, all your discipline dissolves into a stream of feverish fear. You are convinced that you have the perfect systems, that you possess the necessary tools and knowledge, yet the end-of-month result again shows a red balance, an unbearable reminder of your incompetence. In this moment of deep frustration, you blame the market, the broker, the insiders, but you never dare to look at the root of the problem, your own internal imbalance that dictates your actions. The philosopher Epictetus, the great Stoic, taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about events, and this very truth is the key to unlocking profitability. You are not losing money. You are losing the battle with your own uncontrolled emotions and reactions to external, indifferent price movements. Therefore, today, we will reveal the truth you ignore. Your inability to be profitable is a direct consequence of neglecting the wisdom that lies within the realm of internal control. Many traders devote years to studying complex indicators, financial mathematics, and macroeconomic models, but they spend only a few minutes understanding their own psychology, which is the true lever of success or failure. The market is a chaotic, unpredictable system that does not submit to your desires or forecasts, and attempting to force it to act according to your will is the source of all your suffering. Your mistakes, such as moving a stop-loss, doubling down on a losing position, or impulsively entering without a plan, are not random slips, but clear symptoms of a deep-seated philosophical ignorance regarding the nature of control. You believe you possess money, but in reality, money and the market possess you because you have allowed your emotions to become slaves to external changes. True mastery of trading lies not in prediction, but in the impeccable management of what is actually under your control, regardless of where the price goes in the next second.
The primary trap into which unprofessional traders fall is the tendency to seek external justification and validation for their actions. They open positions to prove they are right, rather than to execute a plan, and their self-esteem becomes inextricably linked to the current P&L, profit and loss figure. When you allow your dignity to depend on the fluctuations of random exchange value, you hand your freedom over to the market, becoming a puppet in its cruel theater. If you feel euphoria from profit and deep depression from loss, it means you are not just a trader. You are an emotional gambler using the market as a source of dopamine rather than a mathematical machine for the consistent application of an edge. Those who become profitable are those who sever this link between personal worth and financial result, perceiving financial outcomes merely as statistical data. This requires a radical shift in worldview, a transition from expecting guaranteed profit to strict adherence to the process. Even after the greatest losses, you rarely sit down for a deep, uncompromising analysis of exactly what was flawed in your judgment. Instead, you focus on fixing an external error, for example, changing an indicator or time frame. You try to control market movement, which is an absurd and stoically unacceptable activity, while the only thing you must control is your own internal dialogue and decision-making. Financial success in trading is not the result of luck or brilliant forecasts. It is the culmination of thousands of correctly made decisions regarding risk and execution. Your inability to earn money arises not because you haven't found the holy grail of strategies, but because you failed to ensure consistency in executing even the simplest statistically grounded strategy. It seems to you that you are seeking knowledge about the market, but in reality, you are avoiding knowledge about yourself and how mentally unprepared you are for high-stakes games.
Epictetus urged his students to always distinguish between what depends on us and what does not. In trading, this means that price is external and uncontrollable, while your decision to enter, exit, and manage risk is entirely internal and controllable. You constantly waste energy fighting the uncontrollable, price movement, news, the actions of other traders, which exhausts your resources and leads to emotional burnout. If you continue to subordinate your success to external circumstances, you will never achieve stable profitability, as external circumstances will always be chaotic. True power lies in the ability to accept any market outcome without an emotional reaction, as the outcome is merely feedback, not a verdict on your competence. It is time to stop being a victim of circumstances and start acting as the conscious architect of your own trading process based on unshakable internal discipline.
In a world where external chaos, market volatility, and constant pressure attempt to strip you of your peace, the golden sayings of Epictetus stands as your unshakable internal bastion. This work by the great Stoic is not merely a collection of ancient reflections, but a practical survival guide for those seeking absolute control over the only thing that truly belongs to us, our own mind and choice, prohairesis. Epictetus teaches how to break the chains of emotional dependence on outcomes, transforming fear into indifference and weakness into iron discipline. Discover the wisdom that will help you remain the free master of your fate, even in the eye of the storm, and learn to triumph where others see only defeat. The link to the book can be found in the description below this video.
The first step toward liberation from the tyranny of the market is understanding the concept of prohairesis, or conscious choice, the only thing that the philosopher Epictetus considered absolutely independent and invulnerable to the outside world. Prohairesis is your ability to make decisions, form judgments, and choose exactly how you will react to external stimuli, even if those stimuli are a sudden price crash destroying your capital. In trading, this means that while you cannot control whether the price goes up or down, you have 100% control over whether you will follow your trading plan or succumb to panic. Your entire profitability is based on the quality of your prohairesis. That is, the quality of your internal, sovereign choice regarding risk and execution. If you choose an impulsive revenge trade after a loss, it is not a system error, but a conscious choice made by your prohairesis in a state of emotional arousal. Understanding this concept completely changes the paradigm of responsibility, shifting the focus from a bad market to bad judgment. When a trader suffers a loss, they often say, "The market cheated me." But a Stoic understands that no one can cheat them unless they give consent to that judgment, as price movement is simply information, not a personal insult. Your task is to train your mind to perceive market movements as indifferent, neutral data that must be processed through the lens of your statistical plan, rather than through the lens of personal expectations. Prohairesis allows you to separate the objective event, price dropped 50 points, from your subjective judgment of it. This is a disaster. I am a fool. I need to break even immediately. Only when you realize that your internal freedom lies in the choice of reaction can you stop the destructive cycle of emotional trading. Refusing to complain and taking full responsibility for every mouse click is an act of Stoic courage and financial maturity.
Epictetus emphasized that external things can harm your property, but they cannot harm your character or your ability to make rational decisions unless you allow them to. Your trading collapses when you allow a sudden price movement to force you to abandon your rational strategy, which is conscious self-sabotage. If you see the price approaching your stop loss, you have a choice: accept the predefined loss or interfere and, driven by hope, widen it, an act of weak prohairesis. Only unwavering adherence to rules, even when it hurts, demonstrates your inner strength, which is the only reliable source of profitability. Make your trading strategy an external object, not subject to emotions, and focus your prohairesis solely on its flawless execution. The practice of prohairesis requires constant awareness of what you can and cannot control at any given moment. You do not control the next tick, but you do control whether you open a position with an adequate risk per trade. Trading term 1, risk per trade. Formula: initial capital times risk percentage per trade equals maximum loss amount. When you have clearly defined that your risk per trade is only 1%, you strip the market of the ability to cause you devastating harm, as the harm is already calculated and accepted. Accordingly, any price movement that triggers a stop loss should be perceived by you not as a failure, but as the successful execution of a pre-established loss limitation plan. Your prohairesis allows you to choose calm over panic because you know that a loss is a statistical expense, not a personal punishment. Change your internal choice, and you will change your trading result, for the external world merely reflects the quality of your internal decisions.
The greatest delusion of an unprofessional trader is believing that their success depends on external recognition or a large account balance, whereas true success is the internal satisfaction of flawless plan execution. If you followed your plan with extreme precision, you won, even if the trade turned out to be a loss, because your prohairesis was aimed at the integrity of the process, not a self-serving result. A loss accepted according to the rules is a lesser harm than a profit aimed by breaking the rules, because profit gained through chaotic actions reinforces bad habits and destroys discipline. Every choice you make is an investment, either in discipline or in chaos, and only a constant choice in favor of discipline can ensure long-term profitability, regardless of momentary fluctuations. Begin to consciously choose rational judgment over emotional impulse, and you will feel true stoic freedom in the market.
The concept of the gift of loss, or accepting a loss as a necessary fee for education and statistical edge, is fundamentally stoic and completely foreign to most traders who view a loss as a personal defeat. Epictetus taught that we should value things only to the extent that they can be taken from us, and accordingly, money in the market is only a temporary, rented resource that can be returned to the owner, the market. When a trader fights a loss, they are not fighting price movement, but reality and the inevitability of the statistical law that requires losing trades for any system to function. Perceiving a loss as a business tax, as operating expenses, is the only psychologically resilient way to function in a high-risk environment. Only when you fully accept that losing trades are not just possible, but necessary, will you be able to trade without fear. Non-acceptance of a loss leads to so-called holding on to a position, where a trader watches as their small loss turns into a catastrophic one because their ego refuses to admit a mistake. They believe that if they close the position, they admit they were wrong, and this need to be right is lethal for capital. The gift of loss lies in the fact that every losing trade closed by the rules provides you with invaluable information about your system and the market environment. A loss is not a verdict, but harsh yet honest feedback that should be used to calibrate your strategy and improve its parameters. If you cannot thank the market for taking $100 that protected you from losing $1,000, you will never be profitable because you fear the lessons.
Traders who avoid losses often turn into low-time-frame scalpers seeking instant validation or holders of hopeless positions praying for a retracement. This fear of loss breeds chaotic variance in results, making stability impossible. Trading term 2, variance. Formula: S squared equals the sum of xi minus mu squared divided by n. Where S squared is variance, xi is each return, mu is the mean return, and n is the number of observations. Uncontrolled variance is a direct consequence of emotional interference, where you allow your feelings to increase risk after wins and decrease it after losses, completely destroying statistical consistency. If you cannot tolerate the natural dispersion of results, you will constantly interfere, and your interference, driven by fear, will always negatively impact the system's mathematical expectation. Accepting the gift of loss allows you to ignore short-term variance and focus exclusively on the long-term positive mathematical edge. Stoicism demands that we do not become attached to external goods, and for a trader, this means not being attached to specific monetary sums in an account or the idea of winning it back. Your true value as a trader lies in your ability to perform systematic actions, not in the number of dollars earned today. The gift of loss gives you the psychological permission to close a position when it violates your plan without feeling internally broken. Only when you stop clinging to hope can you act rationally. Hope is the emotional opposite of objective analysis, and it is one of the most dangerous forces in the market. Let your losses be merely confirmation that you correctly adhered to risk limits rather than a basis for self-flagellation. You must actively practice premeditatio malorum, or in trading, the premeditation of loss. Before every trade, you must clearly visualize it hitting the stop-loss and accept this outcome before the trade even opens. If you are not prepared emotionally and financially to accept the loss in advance, you have no right to open the position, as your entry will be based on hope, not statistical calculation. This stoic preparation removes the element of surprise and allows you to execute the closing of a position with indifference, as this outcome was already included in your trading plan.
Only when a loss loses its ability to shock or upset you do you become free from its psychological influence. This is the gift of loss, freedom achieved through the total acceptance of the worst that can happen according to your rules. An unprofitable trader constantly seeks external validation, which can manifest as the approval of other traders, the confirmation of a forecast by a famous analyst, or worst of all, instant confirmation that the market is moving in their predicted direction. This need for validation makes them extremely vulnerable to FOMO, or fear of missing out, and overtrading, as they strive to prove to the world and themselves that they are smart. A true professional relies exclusively on their trading plan, which is their internal, independent law. Trading Term 3. Trading Plan Definition. A documented description of entry conditions, exit criteria, position sizing rules, and timing that defines the structure of a trader's actions. If you are constantly checking chats, watching YouTube forecasts, or searching for news headlines to confirm your entry, you are not a trader. You are a seeker of validation, and this external dependency destroys your capacity for objective judgment. Stoic independence requires that your confidence stems solely from the quality of your process and adherence to the plan, not from a temporary financial result. When a trader depends on validation, their decision-making process becomes flawed. They open a position too early to avoid missing the move, or they hold it too long to turn a small profit into proof of their genius. They close a trade not because their technical exit criterion was met, but because they feel the profit might disappear, or because they have proven their rightness enough. This emotional validation is a short-term reward that destroys the long-term statistical edge because you refuse to let the position run to its full potential. To become profitable, you must develop complete indifference to what others think of your position, and even to what you yourself think of your forecast if it is not backed by the rules. The validation defense checklist serves as a stoic barrier against emotional interference. Was the entry made exactly according to Rule A? Is the stop loss set at a level that makes me indifferent to the loss? Can I leave the terminal and return in an hour, knowing the execution is complete and the result does not depend on my presence? Am I prepared for this trade to be a loss, and will it affect my perception of my competence? Did I open this trade just to get back at a previous loss, or is it truly a high probability signal? Each point on this checklist forces you to return to prohairesis, your conscious choice, and renounce the dependency on external confirmation.
Live micro scene. Ivan sits before the screen, staring at a green candle moving rapidly against his short position. He feels his heartbeat quicken, his brain screaming for the need to interfere. Ivan's internal dialogue. Slave to validation. No, this can't be. All the analysts said the market would go down. If I close now, I'll look weak. And if the price turns back, I'll lose the chance to prove I was right. I'll just move the stop loss a bit further to give the price room to breathe and prove my original analysis was correct. Action. Ivan manually moves the stop loss 50 points lower, essentially doubling his risk, his hand trembling with adrenaline and the illusion of control. Result. The price sharply breaks through his original, rational stop loss, but now it also breaks through the new, doubled level. Ivan feels not just a loss, but deep shame, as he violated his only protective mechanism just to preserve the illusion of being right. This act of moving a stop loss is a perfect example of how the need for validation destroys financial capital. A Stoic, unlike Ivan, understands that the market is an ephemeral mirror that has nothing to do with his personal value or intelligence. A profitable trader does not seek approval. He seeks statistical efficiency, and if his trading plan requires closing a position with a loss, he does so immediately, without hesitation or self-torture. The true recognition that matters is the one you give yourself, knowing that you acted according to the highest standards of discipline, regardless of whether it brought profit or loss. Free yourself from the thought that you must always be right, and you will free your trading account from the emotional weight that prevents it from growing. Accepting mistakes is a necessary condition for learning. Avoiding their recognition is a guarantee of permanent financial stagnation.
The distinction between a slave to price and a free master is key to understanding the mentality that leads to consistent profitability. A slave to price is someone whose emotions and actions depend entirely on the current movement of the asset, If the price goes up, they feel happiness and greed. If the price falls, they feel panic and fear. Their mental state is a hostage to an external factor they do not control. A free master, on the contrary, operates according to principles rather than emotions, perceiving price merely as one of many data points to be processed. A slave to price always tries to guess where the market will go next, while a free master knows that his only job is flawless execution, regardless of future fluctuations. A slave to price constantly monitors their position, feeling a need for micromanagement because they fear that if they look away, the market will punish them. This constant attention leads to overtrading and fatigue. They are swayed by volatility, which for them is a source of stress and instability. Trading term 4, volatility. Formula: sigma equals the square root of the sum of Ri minus R bar squared over n minus 1, where sigma is the standard deviation of logarithmic price changes over a period. Instead, a free master uses volatility as a measure of risk, adjusting position size and stop loss according to its level, perceiving it as a natural market characteristic rather than a personal threat. A slave to price allows high volatility to force them into irrational acts, whereas a free master allows it only to dictate his volume, remaining emotionally unperturbed.
Becoming a free master means accepting that you are the owner of your process, not the owner of the outcome, and your identity must not be tied to a financial metric. A master of trading understands that the market has no personal attitude toward him. It is a cold machine of probabilities, and any attempt to personify it is a mental aberration. If you feel anger at the market when it goes against you, you are behaving like a slave who thinks his master is unfair, whereas a master simply adjusts, accepting circumstances he cannot change. This philosophical liberation is far more important than any technical indicator. A slave to price seeks immediate gratification. They demand that their idea be right now, and this impatience forces them to prematurely close profitable trades to lock in validation, while they hold losing trades hoping for delayed gratification. This pattern is a classic psychological distortion that systematically destroys positive expectancy. Trading term 5, expectancy. Formula: E equals W times PW minus L times PL, where W is average win size, PW is win probability, L is average loss size, and PL is loss probability. A free master focuses exclusively on maximizing expectancy, letting his winners run until a target risk to reward or R to R ratio is met, and he waits patiently, knowing that expectancy only works over a large number of iterations. His internal independence from the need for instant profit allows him to act in harmony with mathematics, not against it.
The transition from slave to master requires constant self-awareness and the renunciation of all forms of illusory control. You must realize that your only capital is your discipline, not your money. A master knows that if he loses all his money but keeps his discipline and principles, he can rebuild the capital. But if he keeps the money but loses his principles, his final downfall is inevitable. If you can turn off the screen and leave a trade open, trusting your stop loss and take profit, you demonstrate that you are a master who has delegated execution to external tools, freeing your mind for strategic thinking. Your liberation from price begins with your philosophical choice. True integration of Stoicism into trading transforms philosophical principles into concrete, executable rules that allow no room for emotional interpretation. Your trading strategy should be so clearly defined that a computer could execute it, as this removes your greatest weakness, the capacity for irrational interference. Trading is a game of large numbers, and your edge lies only in the consistent application of positive mathematical expectancy over thousands of trades. All your emotional problems are execution problems that can only be solved through a rigid, written methodology. Consider your stop loss not as a defeat, but as a contract you have made with yourself to protect capital. It is the tool that ensures your survival for the next trade. Trading term 6, stop loss definition. A predetermined price at which a position is automatically closed to limit losses, calculated based on market structure and maximum allowable risk. A slave to price moves the stop loss, trying to delay the pain,
while a free master accepts the trigger of a stop-loss with gratitude because this mechanism prevented catastrophe and preserved capital for better opportunities. Your financial longevity depends on how strictly you respect this formula, never allowing the price to pass the point defined for maximum acceptable risk.
Philosophy is meaningless if it is not embodied in action, and stoic indifference to the result is achieved only when you make the result itself insignificant through proper position sizing. If the loss on a trade is so large that it triggers a physical or mental reaction, it means you have violated a fundamental principle. You are risking too much. Reduce the position size to a level where hitting a stop loss causes only slight annoyance, not panic or anger, and only then can you execute your plan consistently. Your goal is to make risk unfelt so that your prohairesis can remain clear and rational. You must create rituals for stepping away from the screen after executing a trade, as watching P&L fluctuations is the surest way to succumb to emotional interference. Entering a position and setting parameters is an act of rational planning. Further observation is an act of emotional masochism that feeds your dependency on validation. If your system requires a certain time frame for a signal to form, do not open a lower time frame for extra confirmation, as this is just a way to bypass your discipline. Failure to follow the trading plan is the only real mistake you can make. Financial loss is just a statistical result.
Every profitable trader succeeded not because of perfect forecasting, but through the consistent, boring application of an edge that was defined and accepted as probabilistic. You must treat every trade as an isolated event that has zero impact on the next trade, even if it comes in a series of 10 consecutive losses. Stoic wisdom requires you to ignore short-term streaks and respect the long-term laws of probability, as the market always returns to mathematical expectancy if you allow it to. Success lies in trusting the math and refusing the emotional interpretation of random events.
Rigorous self-examination, or strict self-analysis, according to Epictetus, is a necessary daily practice during which you ruthlessly analyze your motives, judgments, and execution. This practice requires you to ask yourself every evening, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Which Stoic principle did I violate or uphold? You should ask yourself not how much you earned, but whether you acted in accordance with your trading plan and whether you maintained control over your prohairesis. Self-examination exposes those moments when you acted out of greed, fear, or a desire for revenge, making these internal enemies visible. Most traders keep a trade journal, but they record only external parameters, entry price, exit price, P&L, ignoring the most critical aspect, the internal state that led to the decision. Rigorous self-examination requires you to document the intended emotional state before a trade and the actual state after it, clearly marking any emotional interference as a discipline violation. If you closed a trade early, you must honestly state, I closed because of fear of loss, not because of a technical signal, which is a difficult but necessary step toward liberation. This honest confession is your only chance to correct the cognitive errors underlying your financial losses.
You must view every discipline violation not as a financial error, but as a moral failure, because you consciously chose momentary gratification, or the avoidance of pain, over long-term rationality. Self-examination forces you to understand that your impulsive actions in the market are merely manifestations of a general character weakness that must be corrected outside the trading session. If you cannot control your small decisions in daily life, you certainly will not be able to control your decisions when big money is on the line. Stability in trading begins with stability in your personal life. Self-examination requires you to stop lying to yourself about the reasons for your losses. The market was not hunting your stop loss, and you were not cheated. You simply entered a trade without an adequate edge or failed to follow the set parameters. This acceptance of harsh reality is painful because it destroys your ego's defense mechanisms. But only by destroying these illusions can you build new, stronger foundations. Epictetus urged, do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead want them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well. For a trader, this means accepting price as it is, not as you want it to be.
Through constant and rigorous self-examination, you develop an objectivity that allows you to separate yourself from the emotional trader you once were and observe his mistakes from a rational distance.
You become your own mentor and critic, able to point out violations without judgment, but with the goal of improvement. Only this level of self-awareness allows you to avoid the same traps again and again, which is the defining characteristic of an unprofessional trader. Start seeing yourself as a statistical execution mechanism, constantly striving for a perfect, flawless process.
Your profitability is not a financial goal, but an ethical byproduct of your inner work. When you become a better person, you automatically become a better trader. Trading is a perfect mirror that reflects all your flaws: impatience, greed, the illusion of control, and fear. And you cannot cheat the market any more than you can cheat Stoic principles. You must use the trading terminal as a training ground for your character, where every trade is an opportunity to demonstrate your prohairesis. True success in trading is measured not by the size of your profit, but by how closely you came to the perfect execution of your trading plan throughout the month. If you made money but broke the rules, you failed because you reinforced bad habits that will inevitably lead to ruin. If you lost money but followed the rules flawlessly, you succeeded because you acted in accordance with your statistical edge. A Stoic values the integrity of the process more than the randomness of the result.
You must actively practice ataraxia, a state of unshakable tranquility during trading, refusing euphoria in victory and self-flagellation in loss. Euphoria is as dangerous as panic because it leads to over-leveraging and rule-breaking, which is perfect preparation for the next big loss. Remember that the market does not offer emotional rewards. It offers probabilities that must be utilized with cold mathematical precision. Stop identifying yourself with your financial results. You are not your P&L. These are just numbers on a screen reflecting the statistical work of your system, not your personal worth. Free yourself from the slavery of price by recognizing that price is an external object independent of your will, and that your own will is your only true wealth. This internal freedom allows you to trade with an indifference and objectivity inaccessible to most traders driven by fear. Every time you feel the impulse to break a rule, stop and apply rigorous self-examination, asking, does this impulse serve my long-term goal or my short-term desire to avoid pain, gain pleasure? The answer will always point to a weakness that must be overcome before you proceed. Your trading account is a testing ground for the battle with yourself, and until you defeat the internal enemy, your uncontrolled emotions, you cannot win in the market. Utilizing the gift of loss empowers you to fully accept the probabilistic nature of trading. If your system has a 60% win rate, it means 40% of the time it will lose, and you should rejoice in these losses if they follow the rules. This joy stems not from masochism, but from the understanding that every triggered stop-loss brings you one step closer to the next big winning streak. Do not try to avoid losses, try to minimize and control them.
Your profitability will never be stable as long as you react to the market instead of acting according to a plan. Reaction is emotion, action is discipline, and a free master always acts, while a slave to price always reacts. Even in a moment of extreme market panic, you must remain unperturbed, remembering that financial gain depends not on an emotional state, but on mathematical consistency. Constant success requires you to return daily to basic Stoic tenets, the distinction between the controllable, your process, and the uncontrollable, price and outcome. Every time you feel stress, you are violating this tenet, as stress arises only when you try to control what is outside your jurisdiction. Your sole, unwavering job is the entry, exit, and management of risk, all of which must be independent of external noise.
Embrace the philosophy that you are the guardian of your capital, not a gambler, and your duty is to protect that capital through strict risk management, the highest form of financial integrity. If you cannot trust yourself, you can never trust your system. Therefore, your first investment must be in the development of your character, not in new indicators. Use the wisdom of EPICTETUS to build an unshakable internal bastion that no market volatility can breach. Thus, if you cannot be profitable, the truth is simple and painful. You are ignoring the fundamental laws of human psychology, allowing external events to dictate your internal judgments. the ultimate form of slavery. Liberate your prohiresis. Accept the gift of loss as a necessity. Renounce validation and become the free master of your process. Only when you fully submit yourself to discipline will the market finally submit to you.